Welcome everybody to Interview and to CINÉMOI. Time magazine described this amazing woman as one of the nation's most effective advocates of family rights and feminist causes. President Barack Obama referred to her as one of the best attorneys in the country. She's a partner at the Los Angeles law firm of Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg. Her law firm has been the leading women's rights law firm in the United States for 44 years and have won hundreds of millions of dollars for victims. She's been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame and has received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Trial Lawyers. On January 2021, she will also receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Lawyer magazine. I can't tell you how delighted and excited I am and honored to introduce today's interview guest, the great Gloria Allred. Gloria, I'm so happy to see you. She's also my friend, by the way, everybody. So I want you to know that I know this woman as an incredibly kind, loving, genuine friend that would always have your back. So that's from my personal side. But we have so much, to talk about, Gloria. In 1984, you represented Rita Mia. And she was actually raped by 7 Catholic priests. And you took on the Catholic priests in the entire case. And that's really taking on a huge power. What was it like for you and her to go through it and make it public and really confront something that ached for so much of America?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Daphna, for inviting me to join you today on this interview on CINÉMOI. You are a very warm, dear person and a very talented person and a very charitable person, and I admire you and I'm honored to be with you for this interview. In reference to my client, Rita Mia, she was and is a very courageous person. And Rita came to me, she alleged that she had been sexually abused by 7 Catholic priests and had a baby by one of them. And of course, there were other attorneys who felt that they couldn't take on the Catholic Church, that they were too powerful. And then it was suggested to her that she come to me. And of course, I'm not concerned about the powerful. We are used to waging what we call David versus Goliath battles, Davida versus Goliath battles. And I felt that there certainly was evidence that what she was saying was true and that injustice had been done to her and that I had to take on her case to support her, to guide her, to help her to win as much justice as was possible under the circumstances. That may have been one of the first cases against the Catholic Church that was made public, and it was covered all over the world. And later we found out that there was even discussion of this case in the Vatican, and that was in the Vatican files. Having said that, we were on a long legal journey together. And of course, when we filed the lawsuit against the 7 Catholic priests, many of them suddenly disappeared from the parishes that they were in and went apparently elsewhere so that they couldn't be located. I will say that after 23 years of litigation, agitation, and legislation, we ultimately were able to settle with the Catholic Church. I think they couldn't take it anymore. It was like peeling back layers of the onion, and more people came out about priest sexual abuse and on and on. So we fought that battle, from our point of view, we won that battle. And many, many people found it to be a teaching moment that, to stand up against sexual abuse, whether it's against a powerful institution such as the church. And we did find out that there was a cover-up, in part, that we gained possession of a letter in which the bishop was, or the archbishop was indicating to one of the priests that he should not come back to the United States, that he'd been told to leave the United States. He should not come back because of a lawsuit that was pending, and that was, of course, our lawsuit. But we found that, if we can persist, we can resist, we can succeed. And we ultimately did win a settlement for her. And I ended up some years later also representing her baby who grew up. And we did ultimately prove that one of the priests was in fact the father of her child. He had been required to take a DNA test by the court, and it showed that in fact he was the father of the child. I always say the child was indeed a child of the church, that her father was a father, because she was conceived in the church's rectory. So all I can say is Rita, in many ways, started a movement for change, a movement for justice, and I was very, very honored to be part of that journey to justice.
Yeah, the amazing part is the impact on her and also on the community, because, that kind of thing went on, as we know, in many other areas of the Catholic Church. And I believe that this had such an impact on so many people that were silent. But how did it impact her and her child?
Well, one day I'm sure they're going to speak for themselves, and I would like them to be able to do that. But all I can say is Rita is one of the bravest people I've ever met, because you can imagine that it was hard in the 1980s for many people to even imagine that priests could do such a thing. And that the church might be involved in, in a sense, in covering it up. But now we know that's all possible. And now, they have had to be accountable to so many people, to so many children, for example, who were sexually abused. And they've had to be accountable to the parents of those children. Rita, of course, was a devout Catholic at the time. She wanted to be a nun, in fact. And her parents sent her to the church because they wanted her to be safe, and they felt that would be a safe place for her. So what I can say is Rita is just soldiering on through her life, and she continues to be an inspiration to me and to many others who have stood up and decided that they too are going to seek justice.
Yeah, and which, really leads me to another case. And again, you seem to pick on the underdog, and you seem
Well, actually, they, all my clients, they choose me. No, they come to me. I don't look for them. And I know that's not what you meant, but just to be clear that, they come to me. And I, of course, can't take every case, but I do think very carefully about each one, see if this is the case that I should take. And so, yes, I do represent the person who generally has had no power, has had no voice, has had no justice. And I do that, and I represent them against the powerful. And
this is what
we work to equalize the playing field so that power can meet power on an equal playing field.
Well, one case that has changed the world for women, obviously, was Roe versus Wade. And you represented Norma McCorvey, who was the original Jane Doe. And, exposing her in a very risky time, exposing who she was and all the animosity at the time was really dangerous. And yet you really stuck by her and really created a platform. And of course, Roe versus Wade is something that all of us, every woman, I believe, that understands the reality of their lives and what are the consequences. That is one of the fundamental rights that women have to fight for. So tell me about that environment. You were very, astonishing in even early on at that time in terms of giving voice to that. Tell me how that changed your life. Why were you so vocal about it? And what in your life created the pathway for you to make this choice to be a leader in that arena for all women?
Well, Roe v. Wade was one of the most important United States Supreme Court decisions ever. It decided that women do have a legal right to choose safe, legal, affordable, available abortions. And that's important because prior to 1973, when Roe v. Wade was decided, in many states in the United States, states had made it a crime to have an abortion, not necessarily for a pregnant woman to have one, but for a licensed healthcare provider, such as a doctor, to provide it. And therefore, women had to go to, if they wanted an abortion, generally to a back alley abortionist who was not licensed, who only did it for the money. And many women prior to 1973 in the United States then were maimed or died from illegal abortions. I was a person who was a victim of gender violence in Mexico many years ago. And when I came back to the United States and found that I was pregnant, I wanted to have an abortion. And then I found out that it was a crime in many states, or that at least at the minimum, I would have to go through so many hoops to get one that, it just might be too late by the time I was able to get one, or I didn't want to go through all that because I didn't want to be public about it. In any event, so I had to have a back alley abortionist. I ended up hemorrhaging with 106 fever, I think I had, and I had to be taken to the hospital and packed in ice and almost died. So, and that, by the way, I discuss in my documentary on Netflix, which is still streaming, called Seeing All Red. Right. So, and then of course, and the nurse in the hospital said to me, well, I hope this teaches you a lesson. Of course, it did teach me a lesson, but the lesson was not the one that she thought I should learn. It was that I believe that abortion must be legal so that women don't have to risk their lives by having illegal abortions, that is, abortions which could lead to their death. So I have been, for all of my adult life, a major supporter of legal abortions. And of course, since 1973, the Roe v. Wade decision, it's, that having abortion be legal has been at risk because the anti-choice people, whom I also call the mandatory motherhood crowd, they have been doing everything they could to chip away, to erode, to eliminate that constitutional right to choose abortion. In other words, it didn't end in 1973 with Roe v. Wade. And so ultimately, while I was not the person who argued before the United States Supreme Court on Roe v. Wade, I did meet Jane Roe, the real Jane Roe. And it was a pro-choice rally, and she came up and introduced herself to me, and I was asking her, well, are you going to be speaking? And I was really shocked to learn that she had not been invited to speak. And yet the whole rally was about Roe v. Wade. In any event, we got to know each other, and she wanted to speak out. And so I assisted her in doing that because I wanted people to know there's a real person here, not just an anonymous name, Jane Doe. And she was very happy and wanted her actual name to be out there. So I helped her to speak out over the years. There was a point a little bit later in her life where she decided to then go over to the anti-choice side. And of course, since I'm all about choice, I have to support her choice not to be pro-choice.
Why did
Uh,
you decide to
Go
choose
ahead.
that?
Why did she decide that? Well, she didn't say at the time, but right before her death, she did an interview, and she seems to have indicated in that interview, which I've seen, that really because she was getting paid to be anti-choice, and that she was in dire economic circumstances and she needed the money. So the pro-choice side was not providing economic support for her, but the anti-choice people were willing to do that. But she revealed she was actually a pro-choice person. So in any event, it's not my job to judge women and second guess them and criticize them. It's my job to, try to understand them and help them through difficult circumstances if I can, if I'm the person to do that. So I was very happy at the end, she, in a way, fessed up, as they say, confessed that she really was pro-choice. So that means that she's really not somebody that the anti-choice movement can use any longer. But I have been very concerned about issues of reproductive rights. Years ago, I sued a Right to Life pregnancy counseling center for false advertising, and we were successful with that case. So we will continue to be ever vigilant that Roe v. Wade still, is maintained, still is the law of the land, and that we can not allow states ever to criminalize abortion again.
And right now, we're particularly vulnerable because of the Supreme Court's makeup, and because the last administration chose so many conservative justices. So how do you think that is going to fan out in terms of Roe versus Wade?
Well, Daphna, you just made a very, very important point, and that is the selection of the justices to the United States Supreme Court that Trump actually rushed through the confirmation of now Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. She obviously was chosen in part because she has been extremely anti-choice. And that is not an opinion, that's just a fact, because there was evidence that she'd signed petitions against abortion, and had, she has very, very strict views about abortion. What she will do in future Roe v. Wade cases, or what I call the offspring of Roe v. Wade, it does send chills down my arm, and it is of concern to me, because we know where she stands, and the balance of the Supreme Court now has been tilted to the extreme right. So the loss of my shero, and I'm sure your shero, and then I'll put that right here, and that's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The loss of her on the United States Supreme Court, and the filling of her seat with Amy Coney Barrett, who has, in many ways, diametrically opposed views to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is something that is going to lead to serious consequences, and I believe a cutback on women's rights in the years to come. And she's a young woman, so she might serve for 40, 50 years on the United States Supreme Court. We always say elections have consequences, and one of the consequences of Trump's election or selection, depending on your point of view, was that he was able to appoint, I believe, 3 justices to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they were jammed through by Mitch McConnell, because the Republicans also control the United States Senate. That is, they're in the majority, and all persons who wish to be confirmed as justices of the Supreme Court have to be confirmed by the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so, of course, the majority were Republicans, and they just voted for, whomever Senator McConnell wanted to be confirmed. There might have been one or two here and there who refused to go along with it, but obviously there were enough Republicans to make sure that all of those three choices, those nominations of Trump were confirmed. So we'll have to see what happens in future years. I'm not optimistic about, about civil rights in the era of the Supreme Court in the near future.
So this is what concerns me a tremendous amount, because right now you mentioned that there is a war against women.
Yes.
I launched this network, and it's amazingly enough, we actually have as many male viewers as women viewers, which is great. But I launched it to address the interest and the needs of women and to platform women in a better way than the last so many decades have been doing.
And
But
I'd like to commend you on that, if I may interrupt, because my understanding, Daphne, is that you are the only woman who owns a television network. Is that true?
yes, it is. Oprah was the other one, but unfortunately, in order to protect the content, she had to sell a lot of her shares to be able to produce more content that elevated her brand. So she actually has suffered losing a tremendous amount of her shares.
I just want to commend you because you're a pioneer
Thank
and trailblazer, and it's not easy. It's complicated, and I'm sure you have to fight every day to support and protect what you have built. So I want people to know, the first one is the one who breaks through the glass ceiling. And then I know, Daphne, you're a very big advocate for, equal rights for women, and then helps others to be able to move forward.
Well, a part of it is we have actually premiered a great film called Woman. I'm sure you've seen it. And it took 5 years to interview women who broke the silence on violence against women from all over the world. And, as well as this, this particular website, dosomething.org, have actually verified that there are between 20 to 40 million women across the world who are sexually enslaved or are trafficked as human trafficked people are. And the reality is that the world seems to be ignoring it to a great extent, and it's slavery. We fought against slavery with the idea that we have the flag of freedom as a part of the ownership in America, but yet the United States of America is the #1 center for sex trafficking around the world, and Los Angeles is the #1 city. So my question to you, here you are, dealing with, bringing forward the women that have come forth with such bravery, whether it's Roe versus Wade, whether it's all the women that came to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, or about President Trump, or about Harvey Weinstein. But yet, beyond that, women are suffering across the world because so many women that I have met have talked to me about either being economically enslaved, where the husband needs to see receipts for everything. And one woman told me that she had to hide money behind a picture frame just so she'll have a few dollars of her own. So many of them are sex slaves, basically. So, and divorce for middle class and working women is a one-way ticket to poverty. And family law has become a cesspool because the lawyer, mostly it's the men who are the earning spouse, and therefore they can hire the better lawyer. And that better lawyer is ultimately potentially an employer to the judge, because the only time they make money is when they become rent-a-judge. What do we do now to do something to stop the demand and to stop war against women?
Well, the only people who really can stop the war against women are women.
Yes.
And they have to when they think it's the time, and that's not every time, it's when they decide it's time, they need to exercise whatever legal rights they have. And they have to not just suffer in silence. I do represent a number of very brave victims of sex trafficking of underage girls by Jeffrey Epstein, and we have lawsuits filed in New York. And, you know, these women are very brave to have taken that action. But women should know nobody's going to do this for them. They can only do it with them. So women have to know what their options are, the benefits and the risks of each option, and then make an informed decision about what, if anything, they can do. Silence is an option. Living in fear is an option. Being paralyzed by fear is an option. But is that the best option? There are other options available to them. So only when women become empowered and break free of their fear and the silence, you know, are they going to be able to help win change? I always say no one has ever given women any rights up to and through today. No one ever gave women the right to vote.
Right.
We had to fight to win the right to vote. Women like Alice Paul in the United States were arrested, taken to jail for protesting, and fasted. Some women died trying to win the right to vote. And we are all beneficiaries of their courage and their perseverance today. Ultimately, after 72 years, women won the right to vote in the United States in 1920, 100 years ago. It's been 97 years, and we still have not yet won the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution. That simply states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. No one's ever going to give us the Equal Rights Amendment. We have to fight to win it. We're in that fight, but there are not enough women fighting and advocating for it. And of course, we need supportive men as well. But let's face it, most of this is going to have to be done by women becoming empowered. So that's what we are doing. It is something that everybody needs to do something every day. Everybody can do something every day. They can devote their time. They can devote their funds. They can, get the word out on the internet or elsewhere. Everybody can do something. But because we can't do everything, doesn't mean we can't do anything. We all can do what we can do in the way that we can do it. So I know you have been a very, very strong advocate, Daphna, against violence against women, and you continue to speak out against it and for the protection of children. And so that, we all can do what we can do. But let's face it, we can't just talk about problems. We have to get into how do we go about solving these. There are opportunities and options to solve some of them. And so even acknowledging what they are, as you just pointed out, a long list of injustices, all of which are true, that, we can each decide what we can tackle in our own way and how we can make a difference.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think about immunity, for instance. Judges in family court are immune. Even if these women wanted to sue them, the most that they can do is file a complaint. Trump was immune.
Well, actually, he's not immune from a lawsuit for certain things.
Right.
And he will find that out after he is no longer in office, January 20th. So, no, he may think he's immune. He could try to pardon himself for any federal crimes, and I expect that he will.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that that is going to be a valid use of the exercise of the pardon power. And it certainly cannot pardon himself from any state crimes. So, and there'll also be civil lawsuits he's going to have to face. He's going to be stepping into a whole new world that is something I think he fears. and he should fear it, because it's going to be a real swamp for him. It's a swamp that he created. He said he was going to drain the swamp, but he is the swamp. And he's going to find himself sinking deeper and deeper into that legal swamp once he's no longer in office.
Are you here to speak truth to power? And to habla verdad al poder. And let me just say, I'm here to speak truth to power. I'm here to speak to the President of the United States, who shut down the government and put more than 800,000 people out of work. And I say to you, President Trump, we are going to shut down your attacks on women's reproductive rights. We are going to shut down your attacks on legal, safe, available, affordable abortion. And we are going to shut down your attacks on trying to limit our insurance and access to birth control. And your attacks on health care for all Americans. We are going to shut down your thousands and thousands of lies.
It's really interesting to think of him, but of him in a company of men who have made it a habit of thinking they can get away with sexual violence against women. And you've been involved in some of these cases.
Many of these cases, yes.
Even with Bill Cosby, you know, he was such a mega star that everybody else was so afraid, and women were afraid of speaking out. I know my friend Beverly Johnson finally spoke out, but you gave these women the courage to come forth and take a risk, no matter what the consequences were. And I saw them broken because they were made into villains. And you gave them the courage to see themselves as not as villains, but on the contrary, as heroes. So I want you to first talk about how did you manage to give all these women in the Cosby case, because of the statute of limitation, there was not much hope that they could do anything for themselves personally. But somehow you got them as a group to do the right thing in terms of a man abusing women. How did you manage that?
Well, I do believe what Gandhi said, that you can be the change you wish to see in the world. And even though for many of these women who allege that they were victims of Mr. Cosby, it was too late as a matter of law because of the statute of limitations, that arbitrary time period set by law, different in every state, different if you're an adult or a child when you are the victim of sexual assault. Because it was too late for many of them to even have access to justice by suing, we decided, you know what? Let's try to change the law. Let's try to change the statute of limitations, make it a longer period of time for a victim to sue, or eliminate it for victims of rape and sexual assault. So I became involved along with my clients, who are my inspiration. And I testified in Nevada before the legislature, in Colorado before the legislature, in California before the legislature. And of course, we did what Mother Jones, the famous labor organizer, said, which is don't agonize, organize. So we did. And we organized and we lobbied and we testified. And so we were able to change the law in 3 states. Actually, I think in the District of Columbia, we made a change too, because I had a client there. So having said that, there's still a long way to go, but it started a ripple effect. And now it's happening in many other states, even without our going there. And so that's important. So we take women, often they come to me as victims, and I like to bring them to the next stage, which is survivors, and then to the last stage, which is fighters for change. So that's what we do. And we love to see women, doing it, becoming the persons that they should be, learning that they have more strength and courage to win justice than they ever realized that they had. So it's my honor to be with these women and help them to become the fighters for change that they always perhaps wanted to be. And now they are, and now they're role models for many in their own families, in their workplaces, in their communities, in their lives.
I wanted to just ask you a question in a very non-partisan way. I don't care if anybody is a Democrat or a Republican, it's immaterial. We are women. So my question to you is, in view of the fact that all of these women came forth and talked about how President Trump hurt them, and yet in the last election, 55% of all white women voted for Trump. Why? How does that relate to who we are as women? Have we not done a good job in reaching out to women, to white women? Where is the problem here? I don't get it.
Well, I guess they see other issues as more important in their lives than that. I agree with you. It's difficult for me to understand. I don't have the answer. 72 million people voted for Trump in the last presidential election. Fortunately, 80 million voted for the Biden-Harris ticket. And so I can't tell you that there's a lot of money in the Republican Party that is able to perpetrate a lot of lies, a lot of misinformation. And some people just buy right into it and they accept the lies. They either don't know their lies or they disregard the fact that there are lies. In any event, the good news is we now have a change in administration.
Right.
And we can make some progress. It's not going to be as much progress as we all want, unless we can make substantial inroads in the United States Senate. We don't know if that's going to be possible at this time, but it's key. And so, women themselves have to be educated about their own value. A lot of women didn't think women should have the right to vote. They bought into the stereotypes. They bought into the lies and the misconceptions about what would happen if women were afforded and won the right to vote. So, change has always been made by a relatively few people. And we do need more education of women, and not because women are socialized to think that they should be second-class citizens. And a lot of women, they think that having a male chauvinist in their life, for example, is a positive. Whereas, being married to a male chauvinist or in a relationship with a male chauvinist can be dangerous to a woman's health, often is. Because the men who buy into that stereotype often will, engage in acts of violence against women, their wives or significant others. And they are controlling, and often they will isolate the victim, and they will hurt the women, sometimes kill those women. So the bad news is for male chauvinists that they are male chauvinists, and the American Psychiatric Association has classified male chauvinism as a certifiable mental illness. That's the bad news. It's a mental illness. The good news is it can be cured. So we would like those who are male chauvinists to get treatment. We need to educate women about the dangers of being with a male chauvinist. It can seem at first exciting. He's constantly calling you. He wants to be sure that you're okay. He just wants to make sure that you're not with anybody else. And he acts as though he wants to be the Prince Charming. You don't have to worry about the money. and he'll tell you what to do in reference to sex. You don't need to know anything. And all of that is very dangerous because he's trying to make you dependent, and dependency can be very dangerous because your lack of education about your finances, about your sexual life, about, you know, your options and your resources, that can be very dangerous to a woman's future and to her children's future.
Those are the most important words. You know, what you've just said is the truth that every woman needs to hear. And it's interesting talking about that because you then represent a woman such as in the Scott Peterson case. And you turn Amber from the entire population thinking she's a villain to a hero because you address the real issues of what she was facing. You know, I'd love to know what it was like for her, but for you to kind of enter that. And it's interesting because when you and I talked, one of the things I didn't know about the law, first of all, you made me aware that an attorney general, a district attorney, is representing the state. They're not representing the woman or the victim.
That's right.
And number two, that through not having to have the confidentiality of the court, you were able to lend your voice and your legal information to the outside world by virtue of not having to be confined. This is brilliant, and I'd love you to explain how does that unfold and how did it help Amber? And in view of the fact that Scott Peterson may be back in court, what does that mean after that?
In any criminal case, Daphna, the prosecutor represents the people of the state, not the victim. The victim of the crime for whom charges have been filed is often called the complaining witness. And the significance of the fact that the prosecutor doesn't represent her is that whatever she tells the prosecutor is not confidential.
Right.
And usually has to be turned over to the other side, that is to the defense. So many victims don't understand that because they think, oh, the prosecutor's bringing the criminal case and has agreed that I can be the victim. That must mean that she or he represents me. Doesn't mean that at all. And in order to have confidentiality, you have to have a private attorney. Most people don't have private attorneys in criminal cases. One, because they wouldn't know where to find one to represent them. Two, they can't afford one.
Right.
And three, they don't understand what role they could play. But in any event, Amber reached out to me during that criminal case. And so I did agree to assist her. I thought she was very brave. The fact that she was willing to, at the request of the police, secretly record the telephone calls of Scott Peterson. And that was putting her life and her baby's life in peril because she was living alone at the time. And if he had found out that she was doing that, he could have come to kill her. In any event, I thought she was so courageous, she deserved to be supported. So I did agree to become her attorney. And she went from being vilified by supporters of the defense, Scott Peterson, to by the end, I think people understood that she was the hero of the case. And he was convicted. There are issues now before the California Supreme Court. And we'll see what happens with this case. But he has been convicted of first-degree murder of his wife, Lacey Peterson, and second-degree murder of, the fetus that she was carrying. So we'll see what happens. But yes, it's something important for people to know. And I also represent victims of R. Kelly, victims of Jeffrey Epstein, victims of Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby victims, victims of Cuba Gooding Jr. or persons who allege they are victims, and many others. In some cases, we have civil cases that I'm representing the victims in, as well as criminal cases. So knowing options is important. And when these women exercise their options, it's not only often benefiting them, it also is helping to benefit other women.
And it's interesting because Gloria Steinem said that healing, a part of healing for a woman is actually doing something to heal another woman who has suffered from the same cause, which is violence against women. And you know, having experienced what you experienced, it seems that it's a never-ending well of you helping vulnerable women. And I don't know if people realize that often, and you said it, but I want to emphasize it, that often these women don't have any money and they come to you because they are so desperate not to be drowned by the usual approach to this kind of cases. And time and again, you become their voice, but you become the voice of all women, including me. And I want to really, really thank you from the bottom of
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we know that some things have to be done because they're right and because it's important that they be done. And so, you know, we were honored to represent Amber, also the victims of Epstein, and we actually still have a civil case that is pending against Mr. Cosby for a person who alleges that she's an adult victim of child sexual abuse by Mr. Cosby. That is what she alleges in her lawsuit that is pending in Santa Monica, LA County Superior Court, and we'll soon get a trial date. So we have to, keep on keeping on.
You know, we're talking about the retrial of Scott Peterson, and I know you explained to me that there was some questions about a couple of the jury members. But in terms of the Harvey Weinstein, I believe he's going to be tried in California now.
The case will be prosecuted in California as well as in New York, where he was convicted in New York. And the main victim in the case, for whom he was sentenced to 20 years for criminal sexual assault, was my client, Mimi Haley, who's very, very brave. And he was also sentenced to 3 years for another victim, whom I do not represent. In California, after he is extradited here, the prosecution will begin next year. And he is also indicted here, or he will be. He's charged here some very serious charges of rape. And so I represent 2 of the alleged victims in the criminal case that will proceed in California next year. I also want to say that women should know that often they can file civil cases as well. It's not just the criminal justice system that is an option. Take sexual harassment, for example. Last year, our law firm won the largest verdict in California for one victim of sexual harassment by a billionaire. And the jury came back with a verdict of $58,250,000 for one victim of sexual harassment that we represented. A few months earlier, we had another case that we tried that also was before another jury in LA County for another victim of sexual harassment by the same billionaire. And that jury awarded $5 million for that victim of sexual harassment. So I literally want wrongdoers to have to pay the consequences of their wrongs against women. And that, I think, is a teaching moment for them, that they have to pay for what they've done. So next time they have to think about, do I really want to do this to this woman? What's it going to cost me? Maybe I shouldn't do it.
Yeah, and it's funny because ultimately all of these people are narcissists, the billionaires, and time and again those cases are about the billionaires. And the thing that hurts the most actually is money. So you actually hurt them where it really means something.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
I want to talk to you about Jeffrey Epstein for a second.
Sure.
Jeffrey Epstein, you know, a part of his entire case, obviously, I don't think that he actually committed suicide, but that's a whole other thing. I think something happened to him because there were too many powerful people involved. But my question to you about him, how is it that he did this for so long? He was actually indicted before and got away with it. And where is the justice system in terms of all these women that were hurt? How can they delay and not deal with something that continues to hurt young women? Most of them are not even of age.
Well, it's true that he was charged with sex trafficking of underage girls, and now there is, even though he is deceased and there's an investigation of the conditions which led to his death, and to try to determine was it homicide or suicide. But I will say there's also a prosecution now against a person who was alleged to have conspired with Mr. Epstein, that's Ms. Maxwell, to sex traffic girls. So it's a long story. They obviously in Florida, there should have been, I think, in my opinion, a federal prosecution of Mr. Epstein at the time. Instead, it was left to state authorities. He got a sweetheart deal back in the, I think it was 2008. And he was able to enter a plea to solicitation of prostitution, which is ridiculous. You shouldn't ever call a girl who is a minor, who is a child, a prostitute. They're victims, they're not prostitutes. They're not consenting adults, let's put it that way. Any event, that is still being investigated as to why the system failed the victims at that time. But right now, there's a criminal prosecution of Ms. Maxwell. It's ongoing. Her trial's next year. I'm representing 21 victims of Jeffrey Epstein. There's a claims procedure that is set up for them, which is good, where funds have been allocated from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein, and we are seeking accountability through that claims procedure for many of our clients so that at least they can be compensated for what they suffered after we prove what they suffered and we prove the damages. And so we're happy about that because there should be accountability to them. And even though he's deceased, it's not too late for them to win whatever justice is possible under the circumstances.
You know, it's interesting because I was talking to this incredible woman, Norma, who is at triathlon. She was actually trafficked. And she explained to me the whole position of Maxwell in this entire ring. And they are called the down woman. The down woman is the one that befriends the girl, makes her feel that this is okay, there's nothing wrong with doing it, and then becomes a part of the threatening. But usually, she said, the down women themselves have been brainwashed and harassed, and they are much like battered women. Do you believe that that's true, Gloria?
You know, I don't want to say what I know about Ms. Maxwell because whatever I know is almost entirely based on attorney-client privilege conversations, and so I don't disclose what my clients tell me. Right. And also, I'm not there to psychoanalyze anyone. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a lawyer. So I leave that to those who are better equipped to do an analysis of personalities or whatever. Why she did whatever she is alleged to have done, I can't tell you. All I can tell you is I look for what can be proven in a court of law. And then, you know, she certainly has a right to a fair trial, but so do the victims or the persons who allege they are victims. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is that we want to end on is the war against women, you know, because it's prevalent in so many different arenas, not just in the justice system, which I laid out before, not just in family law, not just in sex trafficking, but in the workplace. Women across the board, many women live in fear. And whereby men have boys club, have we, you know, there are leaders such as you and Gloria Steinem who have actually been able to aspire and inspire a movement of women to feel like there is a girls' club and not just a boys' club. My question to you is, what do we do to stop the demand so that we don't have to go through this war on women?
Well, of course, fear is the weapon that keeps women subordinated.
Right.
And there are real risks in certain situations for women to speak out or to exercise their options that may not involve speaking out. Like we've done thousands of confidential settlements, which are also very important because women have been able to win compensation through our settlements and, you know, go on to a better chapter in their life. But having said that, you know, that is the weapon. And, you know, we need to help women learn how they can break out of their fear. There's a cost to living in fear, and there's a cost to breaking out of the fear, and they'll have to decide which is better for them. And once they start do that kind of analysis, often they will break out of their fear. So all I could say is we need more women in each and every aspect of life. As Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg once said when she was asked how many women should there be as justices on the United States Supreme Court, she said 9. and everyone said, wow, why? I mean, they were like shocked. And she pointed out that nobody was shocked when there were 9 male justices, but the idea that somehow that there could be 9 female justices somehow was shocking to women. That shows you how far we have to go. Yeah. And so I think that women belong in each and every aspect of life. I had the honor and the pleasure to have dinner with Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually about a year and a half ago, something like that, 2 years ago at the United States Supreme Court. And then I saw her earlier this year as well. And we had a wonderful chat about women's rights. The bottom line is this: we need more women elected to office on the local level, the state level, and the federal level to Congress. We need more women judges and more women justices. We need more women on boards, commissions, and agencies. We need more women to lead Fortune 500 businesses. We need more women at the top in education, in business, in the entertainment world, in the sports world, in the legal world, in every aspect of life. And until we have true integration of women in every aspect of life, we will not enjoy equality, but we must keep pushing for it. That's the goal.
Gloria, I can't thank you enough. I adore you. You've been a champion for all of us. And we are devoted to you because your voice means freedom to so many of us.
Thank you so much, Daphna. And working together, we're going to do it. Yes. As Susan B. Anthony said, failure is impossible.
It's not an option. Failure is not an option.
You got it.